Imagine waking up one day realizing you're stuck in a job you don't love, living a paycheck to paycheck and feeling like there's no way out. Now, picture this. Just a few years later, you left that job, you are financially free, and you own over 30 properties that are going to generate passive income every month. That's not just a dream, it's a real life story of today's guest, Dustin Heiner. But here's the thing, Dustin wasn't handed success. He started from scratch, faced setbacks, and had to figure out how to make the real estate world work for him. Even when he didn't know where to begin, in this conversation, we break down exactly how he went from broke to fired to building a real estate empire step by step. If you're stuck and feeling overwhelmed, this podcast is going to be for you. Or if you're just wondering how you could ever escape the grind, this episode is exactly for you as well. So stick around, as Dustin's not just sharing his wins, he's giving you the tools and the mindset and the shifts that you need to do it yourself. Let's jump right into this. Welcome to the JV Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Vasquez. Welcome back to the JV Pod. I am super excited because I made a new friend at the Midterm Rental Summit this year in April. And Dustin was somebody that I met there. He never heard of me. In fact, Dustin, that was the thing that you said to me when you walked up to me. You're just like, I don't even know who you are. I just met you and I'm at your conference. And I was just like, oh, cool. Hey, that's kind of weird. You normally don't get people to go to a conference that don't know who you are. And, you were there and you're just like, I'm just going to check it out. And I think that's a really, really awesome way to think about things, is just like showing up to these conferences without really understanding who the host is, but you probably understood midterm rentals, but you just showed up, and it was really cool to meet you there for the first time. In fact, you run your own event, you do your own summit type thing every year. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah, every year it's RoopCon I think you're doing it. Where are you doing it this year?
St. Louis, April of 2025, St. Louis.
April of 2025. And you guys are probably wondering, like, who the heck is Dustin? Well, he became financially independent at the age of 37, which is, he likes to quote, successfully unemployed. And I love that, which I'm assuming you're probably never going to be employable again. Dustin, introduce us. Who are you, man? Tell us all about that.
What's up, buddy? Yeah, so I'm an investor. I started investing back in 2006, before the crash of 2008. And I was solely looking to replace my income from my job. My JOB is what I call it, because you're living just over broke when you're working a JOB. And I wanted to replace my income. So I bought one rental property, and then I started buying property after property, eventually quit my job at 37 years old. And now I had so much extra free time. But then people were asking me, well, Dustin, how do you not work a job? And I said, well, I invest in real estate. And the second question always comes, just like you get the same thing. Well, how do I do it? So I started teaching people, friends and family members, one-on-one. And then eventually realized I, number one, enjoyed it. Number two, had plenty of free time. So I just started coaching more people and stuff like that. But yeah, so now all it's about, like, I still invest every bit of money that I make. I love streams of income, lots of streams of income, but it goes in my river of income, which is my real estate investing. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. From 2006, just bought property after property, eventually had 30 plus properties, and blessed to quit my job. Now I invest in apartment complexes and hotels and all that great stuff.
My goodness. What were you doing before that?
Oh, yeah. So I grew up just like everybody, going to school. And this is the path that we're always taught. You go to school, you get good grades. And then you take those good grades, you go to a college or university and get in thousands and thousands of dollars into debt, and hopefully get a piece of paper called a degree when you're all done. And then you go to a company and you try to shop around to get a job there and get a quote unquote career. Well, I was doing that exact same thing. And I got, Jesse, no kidding, the most stable, secure job you could ever think of. I was living in Fresno, California at the time, really close to where you are in Turlock, Jesse. And I got a job in the Fresno County. I got a job there. And now there's three things that go with this job that make it so stable. It's California, doing IT. I was doing project management, and for technology. So technology, California's not going away, and it's so stable. But at the same time, I bought one property. I said, you know what? I'm going to buy one property, and it started making me money. But Jesse, you know what happens? Life starts getting in the way. Like, I knew I needed to be an investor, but started having kids and working my job. Well, this is really what got me, like, getting out of the idea of working for somebody else. So my wife and I started having kids, and I also had a couple other businesses at the same time. I had a graphic and website design company. I also had a convenience store and pizzeria, started those from scratch, even a newspaper out when I was younger. So I've always been entrepreneurial. So this is what really shoved me really got me to invest in real estate. My wife and I had our fourth child, and I'm a sit down desk job. Well, I go on paternity leave. That's where the dad stays home with the mom, changes poopy diapers and all that good stuff and bonds with the baby. Well, I go back to work 2 weeks after my fourth child was born. Well, in that week, I go back to work on a Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon. I get a call from my boss's secretary, like the top dog. And she says, Dustin, would you please come to the office? I said, sure. And then I hung on the phone. I paused for a second. I thought, why in the world are they calling me to the office? Like, this isn't normal. And I've seen plenty of movies. Friday at 3:30 is not a good sign. Wow, so I paused and I started thinking back before I went on paternity leave. There were some rumors, there's some rumbling going on that there could potentially be layoffs in the county. But I shook that off immediately. I said, there's no way. I've got so much seniority here. My boss is going to do a great job. So I shook it off and I get up. And I walked down the hallway to my boss's office. Now, this hallway isn't very long. In fact, it's kind of short. But every single step that I took, it felt like my feet became lead bricks because I started realizing that I could potentially lose my job. Well, I get down the hallway and I turn the corner. I see my boss's door. His door's closed, and I see his secretary there, super sweet, nice old lady. And she says, Dustin, would you please have a seat? I went and sat down, and she's trying to console me with her eyes, kind of sheepishly grinning at me because she knows everything about what's going on. I know nothing about what's going on. Well, I go and I sit down in that chair, and I start thinking about my life. All this plan that I was told by other people to do, if I lose my job right now, did I just waste my life? I start questioning, did I waste my life doing this? And I thought, oh my goodness, we just had our fourth child. How am I going to be able to provide for my family? Well, as I'm sitting there, my hands get all clammy, my forehead gets all sweaty because the nerves are just crushing me. Well, the door to my boss's office opens up. And out walks a coworker of mine with a piece of paper in her hands. She is noticeably distraught, noticeably upset, but not necessarily crying, but you could tell her world has been rocked. So she passes by me, and my boss says, Dustin, would you please come into my office? So I get up and I go into his office. And I get laid off. And Jesse, this is the government. Nobody gets fired or laid off from the government, but I did. And this is the reason why I tell the story. So I take that paper and I go back to my desk and I sit down at my desk and I realize two things sitting there. Number one, I need to get another job. I need to be able to provide for my family. So really blessed, praise the Lord, to find another job in the same county, a different department, wasn't having issues. So check, got that. But the second thing that I realized, sitting in that chair, just getting laid off, was I need to make sure this never, ever happens to me again. I need to make sure that nobody has the ability to take away my ability to feed my family. So right then and there, I realized that whenever anybody would ask me the question, we all get this question, what do you do? I would always reply, I work for the county and I do technology. Well, I'm basically projecting out to the world that the value that I put on myself comes from my job. No, my value doesn't come from my job. My value comes from my God and from myself and from my family. So right then and there, I knew I needed to be an investor. I wanted to be an investor, but life got in the way. I said, no longer will life get in the way. I will now tell every single person I am an investor. Now, it may so happen that 100% of my money came from my job. That's now my part-time job. I am a full-time investor. So I'll fast forward the story. Started buying property after property of property, each one making me $250, $300, $500 a month. I still have all these properties making me over $1,000 a month in passive income. Well, the last part of the story, I went to my boss, good boss and all, the new job. I said, hey, boss, I'm laying you off, jokingly. And we laughed. And he says, well, Dustin, what are you going to do? I said, I don't have to do anything. I own real estate that makes me money without working. So quickly, the last part of the story is I would walk to and from my job downtown Fresno every single day, 1.5 miles walk every single there in front and back. And if you remember that that short hallway that got longer and longer and longer, where my feet became like lead bricks. Well, this last walk to my car, 1.5 miles walk, I felt like I was walking on clouds because I knew I would never, ever need a job again. And everybody listening, last thing I'll say is I want you to realize that whatever you're being paid, you are not getting paid what you are worth. You are worth so much more than anybody could ever pay you. And this is how you'll know. You're paying just enough to keep you working without quitting, but not so much that takes money out of their pocket. If your boss paid you what you were worth, they would absolutely go broke. So what I suggest is you find a way, and obviously Jess and I are in the same boat. We buy real estate. That real estate makes us money in passive income. We get wealth generation on top of that, assets and all that sort of stuff, that we make money so we don't have to work again. So I'll pause the story because you probably got plenty of questions.
Yeah. Well, is this the first time you were fired?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were fired, you had that pit feeling of like, oh my God, this is awful. Like you had your fourth kid. Okay. So I remember real quick, story. I got fired probably like 2010 from a company called Life Care. And it was a kind of like what you said, like this awakening moment. But it also for me was like, it was almost like I started to realize like I can no longer rely. And you guess you had this too. You can't rely on what you think is going to be stable. And I think that you mentioned it earlier. A lot of us get into these jobs where we think we're going to be there forever, and these companies care about us, but in reality, like we're just an employee. Like, have you noticed that when people get fired and stuff, people are like, oh, well, Sally got fired, and then the next day it's like everything's normal. It's like that person
All back to normal.
Yeah, isn't that freaking wild, dude?
And to go quickly, I'll add, because I want you to keep going to your story, but I found it's more risky to work for somebody else than to invest in my own real estate, to my businesses. People think real estate's risky because they don't know it. There's not a blueprint other than Jesse, yours and my, like we coach people how to do this. But when you get hired for a job, the job because you're living just over broke because they're not paying you that much, but they give you that roadmap, that blueprint, that like do X, Y, and Z and you get money. That's why people think it's not risky, because it's very, very simple. But in my opinion, if somebody can fire you and let you go right just at the whim, then that is so much more risky. Rather than you and I, we make so much more money from our midterm rentals. I have short-term, midterm, and long-term. We make so much more money, like hands down, like 10 times, if not more, of what I used to make, what I make now.
Yeah, I know, it's wild. And I think the thing is like, recently I'm going to tell another story here about one of my brothers that I recently got in an argument with, which happens every holiday. Because my brother, Dustin, let me just give you an example. And this is how I get frustrated with stuff. My brother's worked at a grocery store since he was 16. He's 51 now. Like,
wait, still working there?
Still working there. And for
he
me,
doesn't own the place yet? Oh my goodness.
No. And again, like, this is where it becomes difficult for me to understand. Like, my brother's like barely getting by. And when he back maybe like 20 years ago, he was making like, I don't know, 25, 30 bucks an hour, which was like good, 25 years ago. Fast forward till today, he's making that exact same dollar amount. And I just find it wild that he's never wanted to do more. But the reason why is because my dad was always, he was always about, sustaining stability. Like, this is what's going to keep the family stable. My dad died a few years ago. When he was dying, like, I realized, like, he talked about spending more money and like he wished he did more things. And like, I realized, like, that was my wake up call for me, was the loss of my father. But yet my brother, and many of you people that are listening to this now, and even you, Dustin, you might have people in your family that you're like, there's always another option, but they're feeling like they're stuck. They're feeling like they're not able to do more. They're feeling like they're not worth or have the value to do those things, or they have limiting beliefs. And that's why I think my brother's biggest thing is like, I've been here forever. I've been here for 33 years. Why am I going to give that up? So if we're able to talk to all those people right now that have been at jobs, say they're in their 30s or they're in their 40s, and they're continuing to build, what was some of the biggest fears that you had that were around limiting beliefs, like when you got started, and how did you get over those?
Yeah, it really came down to, am I going to lose my money and be in more detriment, like not debt, but like in having a bad investment that's going to set us back even further? In my opinion, because you and I, we've coached lots and lots of people. What I found, and it's the same thing true for me, I had the exact same feelings. The biggest concern is, am I going to lose my money? That's really what it comes down to. And so I had that. I was living in Fresno, California at the time. In 2006, this is before everything like we know now, technology, I went to Ohio and I bought one property in Ohio, and that property started making me money. And to get there, though, I had to prove to myself that would work. I flew there. I met all the property managers. I walked through the properties, all that sort of stuff, which I'll pause and say, I don't fly any. I have 30 plus properties now. I don't even see them. I've only seen one of them before I bought them. All of them, I don't even want to fly to those states. I don't care. I have other people do all that work for me. But what I realized was I needed to prove to myself, and I've seen this for every single one of my students and other investors. Once you do it the first time, you realize, oh my goodness, it was not as scary and it was not as hard. And on top of that, I'm not going to lose money as long as I'm doing it right. Like Jesse, you teach everybody how to do it right. And so if they do it right, just like you have a blueprint or a work schedule, you go to work and they tell you do X, Y, and Z and you'll get paid. Just like with our programs, you do X, Y, and Z and you'll get paid. Yeah. And so for me, I didn't have that back in 2006. So I had to prove that to myself. So for me, the mindset shift was, I was so tired of selling my time. If you realize when you're working for somebody else, you get 1 hour of work, which means you give them 1 hour of your time or sell them 1 hour of your time, and you get paid whatever dollar amount you agree to work for. Well, instead of doing that, and Rich Dad Poor Dad has a great book that helped me to realize passive income, working one time, getting paid over and over again. I thought I need to go that route of passive income. And for me, the biggest, like I said, tug to get me to stop working for other people was that I realized after I lost my job, it was so much more risky working for somebody else than working for myself.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So here I have a couple questions on that. What were you making at that time to be able to allow you to have extra income to invest? And like, what did that actually look like? Because I talked to, and you probably do too, Dustin, where so many people are like, I'm making $60,000 a year. I'm barely able to pay my bills. I'm barely able to get to, I'm barely able, like, how am I actually going to be able to invest in that? So I think, again, this conversation today, I really want to be speaking to the people that are feeling like they're in a position where they're stuck. Let's take my brother for an example. Like, my brother's going to get this episode. I'm going to send it to him. What would you say, like somebody that's like, okay, I'm making 60, 70,000 a year. I'm spending, more than half of my paycheck for just to, rent an apartment or whatever it is. How am I going to be able to get past that unstuck part? What would be your conversation you'd have with them at that point?
Love it. Love it. And I'll add one thing. If you're making 70, so I was personally making 70,000, roughly around there. And one thing I will add, if you are working a job, you are the highest taxed rate ever, like out of anybody. You're taxed the most. So you work literally from January to May and to June, just paying the tax man. And then you get to live on the rest. So you think you're making 70 grand, you're making so much less than that. But that's one thing. But for me, if I were to talk to somebody, it's a very similar situation, just like myself, where I make just enough to live and get by, just like I said, that job. Well, my opinion was I needed to figure out other ways. And there's so many creative financing, but I'll tell you how I did it. And I was really blessed. When I got married, my wife was taught to save. So she saved like $12,000 or $13,000. I didn't have any money. In fact, I was not in debt, which is good. I was just not taught to save. And so I didn't have any money. And so I said, hey, honey, can I take the $12,000 you saved to buy real estate? That didn't go over very well. It took a lot of work to get her to be okay with that. But what I would say is if you are, let's say, eking out a living, you're just doing the daily grind, what it comes down to, and if you listen to Jesse's show, then you're going to be hearing of other people and Jesse teaching you how to do creative financing. I personally used 15 different ways to get money to buy a property. That's not my money, my personal money. Like I had to work, save, and then buy real estate. I've used at least 15, 16 different ways, everything from private money, hard money, home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, subject to seller financing, private money. Like this is just scratching the surface. There are so many ways. Well, and you'll understand this too, Jesse. I have a YouTube channel, I have podcasts, I have lots of other, social media type stuff. And the most downloaded or watched or viewed or listened to episodes on anything is how to find properties and how to fund, how to get money for properties. That's what everybody thinks is the hard part. And you know this, Jesse. Those two are actually the very easiest part of any of this business, because I found that the harder part is how do we make sure we make money longevity wise? How do we make sure it's managed property? How do we find the right tenants? How do we make sure we're going to be making money every single month? Like that's what's most important. But everybody, they want to know how to find and fund. But in my opinion, if you do everything right, if you build the business right, I always talk about building a business, making sure that it runs itself, which that's what I love with Master Passive Income. That's the brand that I have, is you build a business that runs itself. And then with that business, you then have other people do the work for you. And that's why I love having these properties is I do all the work, but all the funds can come from other people. And well, let me give you one quick one. So I coached a student. His name's Benjamin. He's a pastor up in Sacramento. Doesn't have any money. Pastors don't have money, but he did buy a house in 2015-ish. And so he said, Dustin, I know I'm not going to be able to work forever. I need you to help me. I don't have any money. So I got coaching with him. He got a home equity line of credit on his house in Sacramento. He had a good amount of equity, $250,000. Bought a house in Atlanta, Georgia, fixed it up, rented it out, got it money, and then he refinanced it, pulled that cash out, paid off his home equity line of credit, and now he has this house literally of none of his own money in the deal. This is just one of lots and lots of ways, and I'm sure you've got lots and lots of ways on your own.
Yeah, no, I think that's really you've been able to cultivate this mindset, and I think that that's where, and this is such a cliche thing where everybody talks about how like, and this is where I see the disparity, like even again with somebody that's in my family, like my brother, it's just like, he thinks that all this is like some kind of, and a lot of people out there that are maybe even listening to this maybe have the same feeling, like that's not obtainable. Like Jesse was able to do that. He got lucky. He figured stuff out. Whatever. Dustin did the same thing. His wife gave him money. I can see that as a comment on this, on my YouTube channel. People are always like, oh, Dustin's lucky his wife gave him money or borrowed money. But even before that, there's something that had to happen for you. And this is where I really want to be able to, again, speak to those people that are in that position where they don't feel like they're either enough, they don't have enough money, they don't have the right job. What was the most powerful mindset shifts that you had to make to help you move forward?
Totally. And what it came down to, if you remember, I said in my story of me getting laid off, I realized my identity was in my job. That's like, this is who I would tell people who I was. And so everything that I wanted to do for investing was always blocked because I would always think, oh, I always have a fallback. I always have something to fall back on. And so that mindset shift for me was when I realized that this is something that I must do. It's kind of like burning the bridges as you go. I gave myself, I said in 10 years, I was 27 years old at the time. In 10 years, I'm going to quit my job. I'm a pretty, like, once I make a decision, I'm not going to go back on it. And so I said, in 10 years, I'm going to do everything that I can to invest in real estate and keep pushing forward, even through the hard times. And then with that, at 10 years, if I don't have anything, I'm still going to quit. Like, this is what I'm going to do. But the abundance mindset is the shift on top of that by telling people that I'm an investor. More deals came because I started telling more people I was an investor. But instead of having a scarcity mindset essentially thinks the world's out to get me. There's not enough for anybody. I got to fight for what I get. I used to think like that. In fact, when I first started investing in real estate, I still had that mentality. But then as I grew and started buying more properties, I started helping people too. That helped me to get even better. I started realizing that's a bad mindset to have. You need to have a abundance mindset where it's like the world's out to actually help me. If you keep looking for the bad, you're going to find the bad. If you start looking for the good, I guarantee, because if anybody puts in a comment, well, Dustin had this or Jesse had that. No, Jesse and I are just, poor kids from Central Valley in California. And so we did it, but we have an abundance mindset. Like, it's possible. There is something possible for anybody. You listening to this show, if you have at all an idea, I want to invest in real estate, I guarantee you, Jesse or myself will help you to figure out that one little thing. Like, my wife had money, or the pastor, he had an equity in his property. We will help you to find that, or help you to go in the direction that you will then walk into something.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about all this, Dustin, is that there's so many podcasts and there's so many YouTube videos where people could go learn this stuff for free, but they're still staying in that mentality of like victimhood, or, just like you mentioned, the scarcity. I happen to suffer from that for many, many years. In fact, I think I just got over that maybe like even a few years ago. And I think a lot of people live that way. I remember when I first started doing what I was doing, Dustin, like I didn't want to tell anybody because I was scared that they were going to copy me and take my whole
Same
thing.
Here. Same here.
I was like, I can't go on a podcast. I can't go do this. My students are going to get pissed. And I remember I went on Bigger Pockets and gave my entire plan to everybody. I remember I had this one student reach out to me and she's like, I can't believe I paid $3,500. My class was like $3,500 back then, a couple of years ago. $3,500 for you just to tell me exactly what to do on Bigger Pockets. And that to me right there was like, it made me realize like even somebody that pays to get into a mentorship still has a scarcity mindset. Like it doesn't, like you're not going to get past that. And I think that was really a wake up call for me to realize like, first off, I have something valuable I need to share. Same as you, Dustin, with your mentoring. And it really was that shift that happened. But I think, again, going back and speaking to the people that are like my brother, or the people that feel like they're not in a position to be able to do it, or that everybody else has everything that they wish they had. What habits or routines did you like have to assume that were non-negotiables during this journey? Like, what did you actually have to do?
Yeah, I like that question. The reason why is because I got off track on my financial independence journey. So it started, once I got laid off, I was like really gung-ho and really started buying property after property. But what happens is you start making money, and which is a good thing, a really, really good thing. And you also have a job. So we had 4 kids at the time, and we have five now. So we're very, very blessed to have 5 kids. But when you are making money, from your properties and making money from your job, I really started thinking, okay, I could start spending money. I could go on this Hawaii trip. So I took my eye off the ball. And then there was 2 months in particular. I mean, instead of getting like, $5,000 to $10,000 checks from my property managers, it was like hundreds of dollars. I was like, what? We got bills we got to pay. And so that helped me to realize that as soon as I take my eye off the ball and start spending money or start like not doing everything that's going to be getting me in my goal. So everybody has different goals. Everybody has different risk tolerances, starting positions. But my goal was to become financially independent, to not work for somebody else, become successful unemployed. But I took my eye off the ball and I did not continue and persevere and pursue through the desire to start spending money. Now I'm so blessed. That took me about a year off. I could have retired about a year earlier if I didn't do that. But now I look back now, time is the only commodity that you will ever spend and never earn, make, or get any more of. And I guarantee you, Jesse, and everybody listening, you need to realize Warren Buffett is arguably one of the richest men in the world right now, but he's 94 years old. He would look at you, let's say you're 30 years old, 28, 30 years old, he would look at you and say, you know what? I will give you all of my money, all of my businesses, all of my assets, all of my stocks. I will literally give all that to you. But the catch is, you take his place at 94 years old. I know it's not possible, but just metaphorically thinking, he's 94 years old. You take over. You're now 94 with all that stuff. And he is now 28 years old or 30 years old now. And he then can build up. I bet he'll do it even faster because of all his knowledge. But you need to realize that time is the number one commodity that you're never going to get back. So I then realize I need to put every single penny that I make in my real estate, in my work, to buy the next property. And so for me, it was the perseverance. That was it was first having the abundance mindset, but then also having the perseverance to be able to push through it. And even when there's hard times, because there are times you're going to get lots of evictions, not lots, but you'll get, let's say 1 or 2 or 4 at a time, or you're rehabbing you bought a house and you're rehabbing it. There's a lot of money going out. In those times where it starts getting rough, you got to understand that other people have done this. Like Jesse and myself, we've coached hundreds of thousands of people how to do this. And so it's not rocket science. You just need to say, I'm going to make a decision and push through it and persevere through it. And then realize there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which for me, it's financial independence and financial freedom.
Hey everyone, if you are feeling stuck or not like you're making the progress you want in your midterm rental journey, I've got something that can change everything for you. Imagine being part of a community that's not only supportive, but filled with like-minded individuals who are driven to succeed, just like you. Whether you are just starting out, looking to take care of your business to another level, my community is designed to help you break through those barriers. We're currently opening up registration for new enrollees, so if you're serious about building a thriving midterm rental business and you want to leverage my 10,000 hours of experience, this is your chance. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others in the same path. I hope to see you guys. The link is in the show notes, and let's build something incredible together. Let's get back to this episode. So was there any specific failure that you had or setback that shaped your success specifically, Dustin?
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. The first one that really shaped my success. So if you listen to my podcast at any length, you'll hear me always say, and I teach this all the time, you build a business. Even though we're investors, that's 100% true. We invest, we're investors. But what I actually am is a business owner. The biggest setback that I ever had was on my first property. My first property, actually I had 2 or 3 at the time. I think it might've been 2, but I had my first property manager. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to build the business. I didn't know how to do that stuff. My property manager within 6 months started stealing from me. I was listening to those gurus that came into town and spent lots of money on running the back and all that sort of stuff. Well, that property manager started stealing from me within 6 months. And then I realized, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then if I would just hung my head and said, this doesn't work. Woe is me. My aunt was right. It doesn't work. Well, I wouldn't be here today. But what I did was I said, you know what? Let me go back to my entrepreneurial roots. So it has to work. People have done it way before. I mean, remember, this is 2000 and actually at the time it was like 2008. And so with that, I realized I need to do it the right way. How about if I build a business? So let me quickly give you a show of what that means. And Jesse, and your listeners will understand that they're smart. So let's say you're going to start a convenience store, candy bars and soda machines and all the good stuff. Well, you would not sign a lease on a location, open the doors and set a box of candy bars in there on the ground. No, you wouldn't do that. You'd go out of business in like 2 seconds. But what you would do is you would build the business. You get the gondolas. Those are shelving units. All the candy bars go on the countertops, cold storage, bank accounts, cash registers, insurance, employees, everything in the business before you buy any inventory. Same thing with real estate investing. You build the entire business, get all the right people in the right place for you. We invest in every state you could think of. We invest all over, but we build the business first. And then every property that we buy, it's a piece of inventory that we put into our business. And so if you do it right, you're gonna have the right people, experts that literally live there in the area that know how to do this. And the last thing I'll quickly say that really got me, like the lesson learned, was in 2008 when everybody was going broke and bankrupt. I mean, it was really, really bad. And everybody who called themselves a real estate investor, either they were speculating or whatever it might be, but like they all went bankrupt. I was so concerned. It's like, what's going to happen to me? I kid you not, Jesse. I made so much more money in 2008, 9, and 10 because I invested for cash flow, buying properties that make me money every single month. And the great thing is, I made more money, but the sad thing is people that were losing their homes, sadly, they go into foreclosure, they lose their home, they can't live there anymore. But what happens to the pool of renters? Renters go up because they have to have a place to live. My rents went up. So quickly, last thing I'll say is even through the hard times, bad economies, I still make money if the market goes up, down, or sideways. And the reason why, this is the premise, like this is the biggest thing. If you had a candy bar and you knew that you can buy a candy bar for 50 cents and you can sell it all day, every day long for $1, you'd buy as many candy bars as you could to sell it because you're making passive income, you're making money. But let's say, and this is a beautiful thing about real estate, let's say you did not have 50 cents to buy the property, the candy bar, but it costs you 25 cents to borrow 50 cents. Well, then you're out of pocket 75 cents. You still sell it for $1. You make 25 cents every single candy bar. You'll be thinking, my goodness, how can I borrow more money to sell more candy bars to make more money? That's really what it comes down to. And that's how I make money. If the market goes up, down, or sideways, is I make sure that I can rent it long-term, and I'll do midterm, short-term as well. We do all types. We even do co-living. We do all types of investing for cash flow.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, I want to make sure that I stick on the kind of the premise that I wanted to get here is where we just hit the mindset transformation. You just touched on those things. Yeah, we talked about the failures. So now I want to get into actual tangible steps. So like, let's say again, we're talking to the people that are like, I'm going to get my first property. I want to get going. I want to start putting myself on this map. What are some of the first things that you would suggest somebody like that will do?
Okay. Yes.
I want to make sure that this is going to be like one of those episodes where somebody can come in with a notepad. And if you guys don't have one, you need to get it out now because we're going to be talking specifically about like what to actually do, the actionable steps. Talk about the mindset. That needs to be one of the most important things that you need to shift from, the mindset where you are lacking to the mindset of abundance. Habits are going to be extremely important. Listening, educating yourself, doing all those things are going to be important. But now once those people are starting to get on that track of personal development, shifting their mindset, what is now the tangible things that they could do to go get a property? So like I got $10,000 in the bank. I'm at a $70,000 job. My wife's got some cash saved up. I have a little bit of cash saved up. And now we're thinking like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So what are the first steps now that those people would be doing?
The very first steps is number one, start telling every single person that you are a real estate investor that you know. Like I hid it for a long time. And that was the worst thing because now that everybody, like literally everybody knows me as a real estate investor, deals come my way, money comes my way, renters come, like everything comes because they know me. That's number one. That's easy. You can do that without even thinking. Start doing that. Number one. Number two, we invest all over the country. I invest in Ohio, Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Indiana, and Missouri, I believe. And so my students, we invest all over, just like you guys, Jesse. And so here's what I suggest. You find a good city that has good inventory. Remember, inventory is the type of property that you're going to want to buy. They could rent out long-term, medium-term, short-term, that you're going to be able to make money. And what I suggest is you find a good city in a good state. Number one, if it has to be a good state, like Illinois, I would not invest there. Bad laws. Oregon. Anyway, we don't have to go into those. Find a good state. What I found, Ohio is going great for my students right now. Indiana, Tennessee is kind of a little higher price. But anyways, long story short, find a great city. From there, you start looking at the properties to make sure that this is the type of inventory, the type of property that you're going to want to buy. My personal suggestion, because I love long-term. Long-term's great. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, and I could rent those or sell those all day long. Once I know this city has really good inventory, lower priced homes, higher price rent, so I can make money in passive income. If you make $500 a month, that is $6,000 a year in passive income. 10 properties is $60,000 a year. 20 properties, $120,000 a year. So that's the start. You look at the inventory, but you don't fly there. What you do then, once you say this is a good city that I can buy a lot of inventory, I stop. In fact, I have lots of students say, Dustin, I found a great city. I've also found like 8 realtors. They're sending me deals. I'm like, no. The realtors are like the last step. Remember, that's the easiest part. The next step, once you find a good city, is you stop looking at properties. You then switch to building the business, which is your quarterback. The number one player on your team is the quarterback. He's going to make you, save you, and and protect your money, is the property manager. Your property manager is going to make sure that everything's taken care of. So from the property manager, we ask them what area of the city is a great investment. Here's how I actually ask it. This is pro tip. You gave some good pro tips on my show. I'm gonna give you a huge pro tip. When you're talking to property managers, ask them this question. If you were to invest your money in this city right now, where would that be? They're going to tell you the exact best area for the best cash flow, the best investment. They're going to keep you away from the bad areas, which is great. So you find, and my suggestion, interview at least 6 different property managers and interview them multiple times. You want to make sure they can call you back. A lot of property managers, once they have your money, if they don't call you back when you're interviewing them, you're trying to give them your business, if they don't call you back, if they don't have good communications, how bad would it be when they have your money? Then they're not going to, I don't want to talk to this dude again. Yeah. So that's another one. So I'll pause because I have a couple more steps because you probably have thoughts and questions.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the frame of thought where people just don't feel like I think I could think of already like somebody right now, like my brother would be like, why would the property manager want to talk to me? I'm not paying them to do anything. And that's the mindset that I'm talking about right there. Why is somebody going to give me this information? And I think people don't realize like there's a lot of places where you can invest. I mean, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, you just talked about Michigan, Ohio. Those are a lot of places where you can get, property under 100K, I'm assuming, right? Actually, Ohio, totally. I know Michigan is. And with that, I mean, 20% down is not, I mean, it's a lot to a lot of people, but that's enough to, I believe, save up that you could pick up a property. And a lot of the states we just talked about right now, adhere to the 1% rule, which means that people get at least 1% of its purchase price in rent. And that's how you actually get that cash flow that you're talking about. I don't think real estate's passive in any way. I hear you saying passive a lot. I personally don't feel it, but maybe it is for you. But like all this stuff, go ahead.
Yeah, I know, especially when short-term, midterm, co-living, there's a lot of work. So my portfolio is like 85% long-term. And the longer I own it, the more and more I make money. But here's the great thing. I make cash flow on every single one, but then I have just fantastic property managers that are so great at their job that I give them the systems, procedures, and processes. If they don't already have like a property management system, we'll make sure it gets done, but they usually do. But I give them the processes that I want them to do to run my properties. If a tenant hasn't paid, okay, so here's a process of how I make it even more passive. Like I literally work, before I get to like the system or the process, here's a fun thing. So there's a book called The 4-Hour Work Week. Really good book, don't get me wrong. But the premise is try to design your job and your life so you only have to work 4 hours a week. Well, in my opinion, working 4 hours a week is for suckers. I don't want to work 4 hours a week. I don't even want to work 4 hours a month. I maybe work 30 minutes a month on all my properties because I have experts doing all the work for me. And midterm's great. I love midterm. In fact, I have a midterm property, just got a tenant for, I think, 40 days in Arizona during spring ball, got $7,000. I was like, done. That's great. Yeah. So what I love is I hire the experts in those areas to make sure that it's worked well, like the process that I would give them. If the the rent is due on the 1st, it's late after the 3rd. On the 4th, we put a 3-day notice on their door. And once that 3-day notice is up, then we start the eviction process. And then the tenant, if they want to stay in the property, they need to pay all the back rent, all the fees, all the late fees, all the attorney fees, all that sort of stuff to stay in there. And I give them these procedures that they follow. That means I have to do very, very little. So, but I'll be completely honest. I mean, it might sound, because your audience is really, really good at investing. Midterm's great. I love all of them, but I love 85% of my portfolio I don't even do anything on them. I literally I traveled to Japan for 6 weeks, drove 1,200 miles around the left-hand side of the road, and didn't even talk to my property manager, didn't even look at just money came in. I went to Europe for another 6 weeks, 11 different countries, didn't even talk to my property manager. So all that to say, yes, there is a way you can make it passive income.
Yeah. I've always had a hard time when people brought up passive. So I'm just like, even learning about it and understanding it, and with property managers, like you still got to go, and if people leave, you got to get contractors in there, you got to get on the phone, you got to get people in. Like property managers don't do all that for you. But so I always figured like it's that word passive just gets me every time. Like it really does.
Well,
like it's just,
I guess, so I hear a lot of people say there's no such thing as passive income. And I would say, okay, I can totally agree with that. There's levels. Like you write a book, you can sell it and perpetually sell it, but if you don't write more books, it doesn't help it to grow or continue. Like you write a song, like Michael Jackson's not making any more songs, but he's still making money. Those like extremes, like the best passive income. But here's my perspective of passive income: working one time and getting paid over and over and over again. That doesn't mean I don't ever do any work at all, but it's not, I'm not selling my time anymore. That's the biggest thing. That's the difference between passive income and active income.
yeah, no, I agree to that. My brain is like I I don't know how to, maybe it's because I never owned long-term rentals, and I watched my parents have long-term rentals, and nothing was passive with that at all. And midterm, not passive at all either.
I'll quickly, like my in-laws had a rental property. I bought it from them. They were so fed up. It was bad for them. I bought it, took it over, got everything working. I don't do anything. My properties run themselves. Honestly, that's like, I wanted to make sure my life was as passive as possible. Not like passive in life, but like money coming in without actually working. So I figured out a way to do it. And honestly, if you just buy, Jesse, so for you, if you buy a few properties and turn them into long-term rentals, you'll realize how, if you get the right property managers, because probably got property managers over the midterm, everybody listening, you probably have people over your short-term or midterm, but same thing. If you do a property management for your long-term and you get it set up, and the big thing is finding the right tenants, just like finding the right tenants or guests. I love you use the word guests for Airbnb or midterm or short-term, midterm. If you find the right tenants for the property, and I personally love, give you more like processes. I personally love finding not single men, because they move they'll leave the microwave and refrigerator and couch and they'll go. But I love having old ladies, which is kind of funny, but old ladies, they don't move very easily. They don't move very often. Or families, families with kids that go to school in the area, and parents that have friends and work in the area. They don't move very. I have one property in Texas making me $2,200 a month in rent from this one property. I bought it for $160, but $2,200 a month in rent. I don't do anything. They've been in there for say 8 years, and I don't do a thing. So there is absolutely a way to make it passive, as passive as it can be, without you get your property management statement, make sure everything looks good, and put it away and go back to playing with your kids.
Yeah, I think again, my brain just goes like finding deals, financing, property maintenance, managing tenants. Even though that the property managers are doing, there's still stuff they come to you. Involvement with property managers, overseeing certain things like unexpected issues, evictions. You got to deal with, like, the property managers aren't dealing with evictions. You are. Market downturns. Like the way my brain thinks.
I don't deal with the evictions at all. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. They take care of them.
They do all that stuff for you, like dropping getting the police out there, everything. Like I literally have nothing to do with my properties other than receive a check, or if there's a high expense, let's say it's over $500. Hey, Dustin, here's a water heater went out. Okay, get me some more quotes. That's the interaction. Okay, that's a good quote. Go ahead and do it. Even rehab. I don't do any, not when I buy rehab, I usually get a contractor, but on the flipping, turnover for a new tenant, I don't do a thing. They take care of all that. But you're doing a lot of you're outsourcing the communication to somebody to probably walk the property to make sure they're doing, you're getting on calls with them. So like technically that's not passive, because you're technically.
I don't do any of that stuff. Nope. They do all that stuff.
So you're just like, take that property, make it money for me. I don't know. We don't need to talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing. Somebody might be thinking, well, shoot, what if it doesn't work that way? I fire them. And find it. There are great property managers. There's also very bad property managers. Easy to put on a hat. Say, yes, I'm a property manager. No. And so if you go back to what I was saying, we interview at least 6 or more property managers in a city, because we want to make sure we find the very, very best property manager. Because I know And I speak from experience. I did it the wrong way and just, oh, you got a pulse? Come in here and manage my properties. Just like if you had that convenience store, you saw somebody walking across the street say, hey, you have a pulse, come in and manage my business, manage my money, my customers, my inventory, my employees, insurance, like manage all that. No. You would hire, you'd take a long time to hire them. Same thing with properties and property managers. You take a very long time. And here's the one key thing. You hire slow, which means you interview for a long time, lots of calls and you interview them, but then you fire fast. I give my property managers at least one kind of do-over. Okay, that was a mistake. You screwed up. Don't do it again. If they do it again, they're fired. I move on really, really fast. In fact, I just fired one property manager. They were taking literally 4 months just to fix up a property. They said, oh, I'm understaffed, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. You're losing me money. Fired them, got somebody else. So I hire and then fire if I need to. But there are so many great property managers out there. If you get the right ones, they're going to make your life like a heaven.
See, that's what I mean by passive. Now you had to go call all these other places to find the right fit. So now technically that's not passive anymore. It's you spending your time.
Remember, I'm a business owner. And so there's something that has to, but if you remember, I'm not working to make that money. I'm working to make sure that property, because that property is what's making you money. But I get it. I mean, we could split hairs a little bit more on what's passive or what's not. I agree. There's always.
This is my favorite argument to ever get in with people was when they say passive. I'm like, oh, really? Like, what do you just got on a phone call? Is that passive? I don't know.
I'm not working to make that money. I am working to make sure my business is making money. Yes, I get it. But yes, I'm with you. I'm not against it on that.
Yeah, I know we went down the passive rabbit hole. Okay, so we talked about, we're going back to the folks that are trying to get their first property. So they're reaching out to property managers. They're connecting with people. Now let's get into the funds part, because this is where everybody's like, I don't got cash. I'm trying to figure it out. Or maybe I got $10,000 saved up. I found a couple markets that fall under the 1% rule that maybe I might be able to pick up something that's 100,000. And I'll use what a lot of Californians say. I'm going to give you this example. Well, I'm going to you're saying buy property in Cleveland, Ohio, but I've never dealt with snow before. I live near the sun. Like we don't even have any 4 seasons. It's just sunny all the time. How am I going to be able to deal with those things? Those are what people's brains think. So walk us through what that part is now with the cash, trying to figure out how to invest out of state. We talked to property managers. We're reaching out to people already. We're connecting. We're listening to your podcast. You're talking about certain markets. So now we kind of narrowed it down to, what are some key things that we want to look at for narrowing down markets? And then what are we going to do afterwards to go ahead and move forward with that?
Got it. I cover all that stuff. Now I'll get to the financing in just a second, but I want to touch on the idea of snow. Like I'm from, Fresno, California. We get snow every 15 years. So little. But in Cleveland, totally different. Now I get students all the time. They'll come to me, in one of our group coaching calls or, one-on-one coaching with one of our coaches. They'll say, hey, Dustin, you're the expert of this city. You invest there and you're the expert coach. I'm like, no, stop. I am not the expert. Even if some cities, I have like 15 plus properties there, but I'm not the expert. I don't rely on myself to know. I make sure that the experts, those are the people that live in the area, have business in the area. Like your brother might say, well, why would a property manager want to talk to you and give you all that? Because they want business. That's their business, is they want to manage properties. And so we hire the experts in that area, those experts from inspectors, property managers, contractors, plumbers, roofers, realtors, insurance agents. Those experts know those areas. Now, here's the key, though. You might be thinking, well, what do you find a bad one? Well, what I personally do, here's a little pro tip for you. I make sure that every person in my team, from the contractor to plumber, whatever, they all check on each other in a sense. I'll give you a quick reason how or way that I do it. Let's say I had a sliding glass door. This literally happened. One of my properties had a sliding glass door installed, and I didn't want to fly that and make sure it works. I didn't have a property manager at the time because it was a rehab, and I didn't have a contractor. I was doing it all myself. I had a plumber go in and fix a toilet. I say, hey, plumber, would you please go? We just had a door installed. Will you please look at the door? Just let me know if there's anything wrong with it at all. Just open it up and close it. He said, hey, no, everything looks great. Great. So that's just one example of how to do it. So that's number one, is you're not the expert. I'm not the expert. The people that are there, they are the experts. Number one. Number two, how to do financing on these properties. Let's say you have no money at all. If you have no money, there's so many strategies and options for you to get financing. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a tool belt you're a carpenter, you're a tool belt. If you have nothing in your tool belt, it's going to be really hard to build a house. But if you have a hammer, let's say you have a square, a speed square, you have a tape measure, you have nails, you have all these other tools inside of your tool belt, then you can build. Then you also figure out, well, I don't need a screwdriver for this job. I need a hammer, or this job needs a screwdriver instead of a hammer. Meaning you find a deal, and deals are easy to find, which we can get into. You find a good deal that is a good deal that you want to buy. And you're like, shoot, I don't have the money. Well, you need to have these other tools in your tool belt, from figuring out, do you have anybody that might have private money? You never know. As long as you start telling people, I'm an investor, they might say, oh, I have somebody. Can I invest with you? Private money. Or if you talk to the seller and say, hey, seller, I could get financing on it, but have you thought about you being the bank where I can pay you even more money over the long term? That means seller financing, kind of example. I've even done this. So, funny enough, I've got a signature loan from a bank, which means unsecured line of credit. Walk in and say, hey, can I just have some money? They say, sure, here you go. And I got like 15 grand in a signature loan, higher interest rate. I've even used credit cards. Kid you not, it's advanced strategy, meaning you have to know what you're doing, have to have your business lined out where you can buy something and make money from it. Well, I knew my expense of my candy bar being 50 cents to 25 cents to borrow. I could sell it for $1. I took a cash out from a credit card, bought a house with it, and then paid off that credit card over time. And then now I have the house and no credit card. And so when you're thinking about the financing, just think there are so many options out there that if you think, I don't have the money myself, you need to start realizing, actually, there's a term, and you know this, Jesse, OPM, other people's money. It could be a bank. It could be a hard money lender. It could be your neighbor across the street. So I want people to, so going from scarcity, thinking I don't have the money, going to abundance. It's out there. The money's out there. You just have to work. You have to work towards finding how to get that money. But like I said, you want to get all, like I said, 15 different ways that I've used financing to get my properties. Those are all different tools on my tool belt. And I use multiple at the same time. Let's say I don't have enough private money from, let's say, from my a business that I visit, and I talk about investing. He said he will have some money he wanted to lend. I'm like, great. So that's private money lender. That's not enough. Then I might need a, let's say, hard money loan. And then I have a conventional loan, or I grab some of my HELOC and buy some. So you piece all these, it's called creative financing, piece them all together to buy that property. So what next steps? So questions there, and then also any other next steps that you could think of.
Yeah, I think that's where people get lost. And when you get into this discussion of like, you go and get other people's money and they're just, their mindset is, I'm going back to my brother because I recently just had a conversation with him. Like, you think this is just so easy, but in reality, like your friends, family, you mentioned this a minute ago, a lot of people have money. I think money is literally everywhere. And most people don't think that way. They think it's the scarcity. We just talked about that earlier. And I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest lesson that I had early on is that I didn't think there was much of enough around. But now that I'm in this position now, like I just see that there's money literally everywhere. In fact, there's literally money everywhere. And I do believe I think we live in an age now when money is easiest to probably access and easiest to get. I mean, people are creating courses where they're just like stacking rocks. Dustin, like, can you imagine? Like somebody's literally on the beach stacking rocks, and they're created a TikTok account. And now they're selling how to rock stack. Like there's literally, you can literally make thousands of dollars if you take the idea and things and you just bring it to the masses. And again, that's where people, I'll say like, why would anybody want to stack rocks? Well, guess what? There's a whole freaking community of rock stackers that love to try to stack rocks.
I know somebody that teaches backyard chickens, how to have chickens in your backyard. And he teaches people how to do that. He has a huge community of lots of people that pay him like $50 a month to teach them how to do chickens right. So yes, you could do that too. One quick thing I want to quickly add is when people say, oh, like your brother, oh, you think it's so easy. Like, no, I don't think it's easy. I just know that it's simple. Like, I don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this stuff, but it is a simple step-by-step. Like how I teach, I know how you teach too. We step-by-step. You do X, Y, and Z. It's just a blueprint you just follow. So it's simple. It's not easy. If it was easy, literally everybody would do that. Right. But it's a simple process that you need to walk through. And if you keep telling yourself that you can't do it, I love the saying, if you say you can't, it means you won't. Means you're telling yourself, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, I love that. My mom used to always tell me, don't ever say you can't. Like, don't ever say you can't. Because if you can't, you like, and that really stuck with me as a kid. Like, she would tell me that all the time. Like, if you say you can, like, then you're not ever going to be able to create anything. It's such a big, again, we talk about mind shift and mindset, like so important. Okay, cool. So you just talked about a couple things now. You talked about creative financing, which I think is, I mean, there's so many people in this world now, thanks to Pace and Sub2 and all these people that talk about it so often that you can literally, go on free Facebook communities and find deals and find opportunities where you don't have to actually use your own money to buy property. And if you do have to use money, maybe it's a limited amount. There's something you can work out. You can always refinance, like you talked about a minute ago. If you did take a credit card and, which again, a lot of people are like, that's crazy, that's risky. And you mentioned this earlier. Yeah, when you know the business already, you know what you can get out of it, you might want to leverage $30,000 on a low interest credit card and pay it back in 6 months or 8 months after, you refinance, or a year later. But then other people are like, well, what about that credit card? You got to pay for it monthly. It's $1,000 a month. How are you going to be able to cover that? Like those are what people, would normally say. So I'm just going to borrow from this to give to this. And yeah, that's how it is at the end of the day. You have to.
Well, it's just like if somebody's going to buy a house to live in, like a primary residence, they're going to, very few people have cash to buy it for cash. So you get a loan. That's the exact same thing. You're just basically getting a loan. Now, this loan for me, like with a credit card or a signature line of credit from a bank, it's just a little more expensive of a loan, like the cost to borrow that money. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but in the end, it's just using leverage is what it really comes, the term debt leverage. You're using other people's money. And if you do it right, just like, again, I want to break it down. You can buy a candy bar for 50 cents, but it costs you 25 cents to borrow it. And you can sell it 100% of the time. Like I do, I don't buy a property unless my property manager says, yes, you can rent it for X dollars. And I know my expenses are lower than that by, let's say, $500 or $300, whatever it might be. I'm going to buy it because I know without a shadow of doubt, this expert told me 100% you will be able to buy this property and rent it out. And I know you can, and I'm still going to make money.
Yeah, totally. See, and I think that's really important for people to realize, like, you have to be able to leverage other people's experiences and their knowledge so that you can continue to build. I think everybody thinks they have to do everything on their own. And I think to a certain degree you do. You got to get your mindset in the right position. You got to probably surround yourself with the right people, but then you get to leverage other people and their skills and their skill set to continue to build. So, okay, cool. So since we're continuing on this journey of trying to figure stuff out, kind of the people that feel stuck and what do I do next? So what would be the next processes here, Dustin, that we can kind of go through and break people down? So we talk about where to acquire the property, the cash flow that you're going to need, where you can borrow it. So now what's the next steps that we're looking at?
So we will start with the inventory, city that has good inventory. Then we find the right property manager that's going to manage the property well. And then from there, what I suggest now, you start getting your financing in order. Like you talk to a mortgage broker and you say, or your banker, somebody, you just say, hey, can I get a loan in general? Let me know how much I can get a loan for. So you get your financing planned out. Every single state is going to have different lenders that only lend in that state. So you find a good lender that you can do that. So financing, that's part of the creative financing, but you want to make sure that you're lendable or bankable is what they call it, where you can borrow money or from a bank. Then the next thing that I suggest, once you get that financing started, what you then do is you start looking for other people that are going to be doing work for you. You want to find a contractor. Somebody's going to be able, you're going to be able to call. Now, I will say, most of my property managers already have a contractor, or they are contractors themselves. They have all the crews. So I don't necessarily always have a contractor that I use on my properties, but I have a contractor ready. If my property manager says, hey, this turnover for a new tenant, it's going to cost $8,000. I'm like, whoa, it should not cost that much. Let me get my other contractor, somebody else, to go and look at the the fix up and tell me how much it's going to cost. So I have another pair of eyeballs, not just for price. Price is always good, getting a lower price, but it might not need all that fixing, or they might see it in a different way. So so a contractor would be good. I love handymen. So if I think your property manager should have handymen, but you need these on your own, just in case something happens. Hey, property manager's not getting to it. Call up a handyman. Again, this is not passive. We can get back to the passive income or stay off it. But I want to say, if things worst case scenario, I always have a backup. I always have a way to make sure that I'm protected. So handyman would be next. Then other ones, inspectors. I never buy a house unless I get a home inspection. And so I want to make sure I have really good inspectors. Quick tip would be to get their inspection report, a sample inspection report, so you can see how thorough they're going to be. I've seen some that are just really, really good. Some are absolutely horrible. Another one would be your insurance agent. You want to make sure you have your expenses accounted for. Find your good insurance agent. State Farm would be fine. I personally use Steadily on lots of my property. Steadily.com, really good company. OB.com is another one. But these are all good companies that I can already get a quote. I know what my expense would be because the cookie cutter type home, if you remember, for me, long-term, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. We can go a little bit above that, but you don't want to get into I bought a 3,000 square foot house. Then I realized I got extra walls to paint, extra carpet, extra toilets, extra everything. It doesn't demand that much more money. So insurance agents, inspectors, we'll pause there, but those are the first starting blocks. I haven't talked about realtors yet. I haven't talked about wholesalers or other things like that. This is just the starting blocks to build the business so that it's running on its own.
Yeah. So you're talking about talking with the key people that are going to allow you to get, fix up whatever it is. A lot of times the property managers have those folks. The handyman are going to be a lot cheaper than a contractor. Contractors will charge you an arm and a leg. Handyman will be a fraction of that typically. And a lot of the cool things about handyman is that they have a lot of tool. They're able to do a lot of different things. I have a couple of handymen that are like electricians. They're not professional, but they're professional. But they just don't have the license. They've been doing it their entire lives. And I think that's a big way to save yourself a ton of money. By especially connecting with the handyman. And again, you're right. A lot of these companies, property management companies, are connected or have a Rolodex of handymen already. And I think that's really an important piece of the puzzle. In fact, that's how these handymen build their businesses, by connecting with these companies and putting contracts together. So we got that part down. We're talking to banks. We're talking to everybody now. Like, what's the, now we want to go to the realtor. We want to start connecting. We want to start putting offers in. Like, what is that portion look like?
Realtors are one piece of the puzzle. You're going to get realtors that are going to say, hey, you only work with me. Like, you can't work with any other realtor. In fact, I've even had realtors say, sign this exclusive agreement with me so that you can only buy properties through me. And I said, why would I do that? How about any properties that you get to list for sale? How about you sign this piece of paper that requires that you sell it to me? And they'll say, why would I do that? I'm like, exactly. Why would I sign with you? So what I love to do, just like a tool in your tool belt for your financing, same thing. Another tool belt is finding properties. Finding properties is so simple. It's so simple. Honestly, like, it's not easy, but it's simple. Here's what I do. Imagine I have a fishing pond. I don't want just one line in the water, having one realtor looking at properties or finding properties and me looking looking through Zillow or realtor.com. I wouldn't say I have lots of realtors. I just have lots of people that know I'm an investor. Remember at the very beginning, I said, tell everybody you're an investor. When you're calling anybody, talking to investors in that city, or you're talking to title companies, talking to property, let them know you're an investor, that you're always looking to buy. The more people that know that you're an investor, the more opportunities for somebody to get to you. So if you think about this pond, I'm fishing in it. One realtor looking for properties, me going on realtor.com, finding a listing, say, I like this property. I'm not going to call my realtor, my realtor. I don't have my realtor. I have lots of realtors. I call it the seller's realtor. Here's a pro tip, and you probably teach everybody this too. I call it the seller's realtor. I don't even bother having a buyer's realtor. I'm the buyer's realtor. That's me. And so I call it the seller. The seller's realtor wants to sell to me because they're hoping to get both sides of the commission, which I don't mind it. I'm totally fine. But they're wanting to sell it to me because they get both sides. So they're going to give me a little more information than they probably should. They're going to be pushing for the seller to sell it to me, and they're on my side. So another one, I find wholesalers. Lots of wholesalers. Let me give you another pro tip on how to find wholesalers, especially if you're not investing in your city. If you're investing in your city, it's easy to find wholesalers. Those bandit signs, the ones on the phone poles that say, we buy houses cash fast. Those are wholesalers. Call them up. Hey, I'm an investor. Put me on your buyer's list. Like, yes, please. They want more and more. Yeah. That's one. But if you're investing out of your city, out of your state, can't drive around and find them. Literally go on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, or you go anywhere that you search those terms. I buy houses, or buy houses, or buy for cash, or something like that. You're going to find wholesalers posting on there. Call those guys up. That's easy way. Another one, if you have properties, I get calls all the time from these call centers saying, we're going to buy your house. We're going to give you an offer. I reply, hey, I'm an investor. Can you put me on your buyer's list? And then some of them do. So finding the deals, it's literally how many lines can you put in the water from other investors in the city? Like if you go to a online Facebook group, marketplace, or Facebook group that's in the city of investors, let everybody know you're an investor there. If you go to local RIAs or local meetups, let everybody know you're an investor. So these are all a bunch of lines in the water. Eventually something's going to come because you have so many ways that people are sending you deals.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's that's a lot of information for people to kind of digest too, because again, you're making it sound simple, and it actually is. That's the crazy thing, is that we complicate. When I say we, I mean generalizing all of us complicate everything so much when there's steps you could take. And I mean, right now, this is like a masterclass on exactly what to do. Okay, cool. So we got the realtor now. We got everything set up. We don't even necessarily have a realtor. We're looking at connecting with the listing agent and kind of getting that route, kind of talking to them. I've been doing that for a long time. I think that's a really smart way. I've had some realtors that say, I know what you're trying to do. And what did this one lady say to me recently? She said, my fiduciary, am I saying that right? Fiduciary duty is to the seller, and you're just another guy. That's basically what she said to me. And I was like, okay, cool. She's like,
I personally have no cares if I hurt a realtor's feelings or a seller's feelings. I mean, really, I mean, I'm not as bad as like Godfather, the Godfather say, hey, it's just business. No, it's not that. But they look at you as you're a dime a dozen as a buyer. She just said it. Oh, you're just another buyer. And so I'm like, why would I not look at you as you're just another realtor? So in the end, what it comes down to, if any realtor brings me a good deal, I'm not going to go around their back and try to, stiff them on it. I'm literally going to go through them. People know me as an investor, so they're going to bring me deals. And if I don't buy it, they're going to have somebody else. But in the end, it's the deal for me that I look at, not the person.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That was the first time I ever heard that. And I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah, like normally, that angle doesn't go that route. Okay, cool. So we got the realtor. We've connected with them. We're putting deals down. What's the next steps?
Next step is absolutely where you are then going to have I'll say it this way. I've had people come to me and say, Dustin, I followed those quote unquote gurus I saw on TikTok. I followed this and I did everything they said. I found a good city. I ran the numbers, made sure I was going to make $50 a month in passive income, or no, I was going to get appreciation. It was going to be great and everything. So I spent thousands of dollars to buy the property. Then I spent thousands of dollars to fix up the property. Then I tried to find a tenant, and then I tried to find a property manager. And the property manager I called said that they will not manage it because they'll get shot there. It's like, well, you no longer have an asset. You have a liability now. How much better, instead of finding the property manager last, like most people tell you to do, which I said, go get it first. How much better would it be if you call up the property manager, because you already talked to them, you already hired, they have the right people. Hey, property manager, instead of I bought this house and then they don't manage it, I'm looking to buy this house, XY, number 1 Happy Street. I'm looking to buy this house. How much will it rent for? What's the vacancy factor? What's the clientele like? And would you manage it? If they say no, then you don't waste your time and money buying it because it's not a good property. Right. If they say yes, they're going to tell you all that information. You could put that in your information or your due diligence, your calculators and all that sort of stuff to make sure you're going to be doing it right. So once you have, let's say you find a good deal out of everything we talked about, you have a good deal, then I talk to my property manager. I don't have them visit yet. Eventually they will visit, but I just said, here's a list of 5 different properties. Look online. Just tell me area, how much you rent for, all that sort of stuff. And they send me back a response to all 5. And then I could say, okay, which one do I actually want to now invest more time into? Which one do I want to have the realtor walk through, take pictures? Because remember, I invest out of state, so I'm not going to be doing it. Realtor to walk through, take pictures, let me know what's wrong. And then I could put in an offer. And then once that offer is accepted, then I have my property manager go out there, verify everything, and then at the same time have an inspector come out. So that's the next step.
Got you. Okay, cool. Now where are we going after that now? Like what's the closing scenario here where we're getting the inspectors to come in, we're looking at the property, disclosures are all there. What's that next step that we're wanting to do?
The next step is definitely business side. Now, title company's going to be doing all their work. They're going to do the title inspection, all that sort of stuff. Obviously your mortgage broker is going to be doing all their work, but on your end, here's where you can lose money, which means you're losing time, you're losing money. Some students have waited until they close, and now they start, like, it may be 2 or 3 days away from closing, maybe a day away, and they call their contractor now. Hey, contractor, I got this property. Would you go buy it? Well, shoot, contractor's 6 weeks out. Yeah. They're like, oh my goodness, like I wish I would have called them sooner. Same thing with property manager. So as soon as you get a property under contract, that's literally when I call everybody. Like I would have the contractor go by beforehand when it's inspection period, 10-day inspection period, never buy a house without a 10-day inspection period. I'd have the contractor go by, the property manager go by. I have everybody go by and say, I'm going to close on this date. Then when I close, it needs to ramp up right then and there. So the best you can do is communication, over and over and over communicate.
Got you. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So, all right. So now you're getting everything together. We're gonna have to have another episode for another time to just talk about contractors alone, because that's a whole that's a whole. I've been stiffed by contractors. I'm sure you have at a certain point. I think everybody in the game long enough is going to get stiffed by a contractor. Even people that they know, like, and trust eventually somehow maybe will come back. I've had that happen to me. And it is not fun. I can tell you that, Dustin. It's not a fun thing. Legal issues, all those kinds of things. It is absolutely not fun. But I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, professionals that are in this space now, that have always like learned that hard lesson. And almost in a way, I think it's like a good lesson to learn. I'm glad I've learned the lessons that I have that cost me thousands of dollars. In fact, one of them cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was a lesson that I absolutely had to learn. That's for sure.
I've been through that too, 100%. I've had bad property managers, bad contractors, bad inspectors, like you name it. But every single time something bad happens, you need to learn from it and get better at it. And now, as best you can, you mitigate those losses, those problems that come up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's, again, like I remember when this first happened to me, I was talking to my wife and she's just like, "You lost all this." And I'm just like, "This is $100,000 lesson. I learned it."
I mean, people spend that much money and go to college or university and they don't learn these lessons. They might get other things that they're taught, but that's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yes, it's a lot of money. Trust me, I know that. I think I'm still feeling it to a certain point, right in my stomach somewhere. I feel that pit. Okay, cool. So this is basically like, this is what I wanted to get out of today's episode for you guys listening to this out there, is that you do have the ability to create the life that you want. I mean, Dustin and I both come from the Central Valley, which is the armpit of California, which many of you heard me talk about very much. And I do think there's a lot of potential. I wouldn't encourage people to quit their jobs right away. Dustin, I don't think you would do that either.
No, I would not.
Yeah, I would suggest put a plan together, just like you did. 10 years, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to live below my means. We're going to drive the 98 Toyota Camry. We're going to cruise that for the next 10 years instead of buying a Tesla and spending $800 a month on a Model 3 payment. Like, those are the small little things you need to do. And I think a lot of times people need to reevaluate their expenses before they decide that they're wanting to get into real estate investing. Those are like some of the first things you need to do. But I mean, today was just basically like a masterclass on exactly what you should be doing in order to get your first property, and how to think about things, how to put yourself in the right mindset, talking about people with what you're doing before you're even, quote unquote, an investor. You're already telling yourself that's what you are. You're telling other people that's what you're going to be doing. And I think a lot of people even have that as a hard, like, why am I going to tell somebody that if I haven't bought anything yet? It's putting yourself in that frame of mind, that frame of reference, being able to see yourself in that position. And I do believe, I'm a big, believer in, you start to adapt certain principles of what you believe, you'll start to see those things happen in the same way that you will tell yourself, if something's hard, it's going to be hard. If you tell yourself I'm not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I do believe that there is, a lot of that with any type of self-development. So my last question for you, Dustin, is, if you had to go back to spend a day with yourself from the very beginning, what advice would you give to yourself?
Easy. Very, very easy. Outside of, try to invest for passive income and be diligent, it would be getting out of the scarcity mindset and abundance mindset in a way. And I'll give you practical. Start working with more people. I was not telling anybody I was investing where I was investing, because I was thinking they're going to, just like you said, they're going to take all the deals and all sorts of stuff. I realized as soon as I had the abundance mindset that there's so much out there, my business grew so much. I made so much more money. So what I would tell back to my former self when I was younger, just getting started, is like, there's so much out there that if you work with other people, that's why I literally created my conference, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, similar to Midterm Rental Summit, is I wanted to connect with people, because I realized most investors, they have that same type of mentality. Like, hey, we got to, just, it's all on our own. I mean, for me, it came from playing sports, growing up, it was always like a competition. But I realized once I started collaborating, once I started working with other people, my goodness, I made so much more money. So that's the one thing. If I were to go back and say, here is my suggestion, go to conferences, go around people that are currently doing it. Because I'll be completely honest, you're probably very similar, Jesse. So where I live, I know nobody else that invests in real estate like I do. Like, not just like I do, but it's like in general. Most people, they're just working regular jobs. I had to create my podcast. I had to create the coaching. I had to create the courses as well as my conference to get around the right people. But then going to other conferences, that's the reason why I went to your conference. So like, shoot, I'd love to meet more awesome people that are real estate investors so that I can grow. But then at the same time, how can I help them? So that's the biggest thing I would say. If I were to go back, obviously outside of building the business first, all that sort of stuff, is to add to that, go to events, because these conferences. And the reason why is because these are people who are very serious about their investing. They spent their time, money, and energy, and maybe got time off of work to go to these events. Those are the people that you need to talk to, because they are also in the same mindset of collaborating, of helping, and wanting to network. So that is definitely something I would tell myself.
Got it. I love that, man. That's awesome. All right, I'm gonna throw some rapid fire at you, and then we're gonna go into finding out where folks can find you and all that stuff. You ready for it?
Let's do it.
All right, you sure?
I don't know.
Okay.
Give me a minute. Let me think.
All right, here we go. This is one of my favorites. You're ready for it. Would you rather deal with one giant tenant who clogs the toilet every time, or 100 tiny tenants who are perfect but always late?
Oh, I would much rather have 100 tenants that pay. The reason why is I get a late fee. And if they're perfect and they're going to be continually paying money, I get a late fee as long I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not living hand to mouth or whatever, where it's like, I have plenty of money. And I do have one tenant who's literally late every single month. I get an extra $100, or I think it's like one of them was $100. Another one, he's always late, $40 but they're perfect. And they continually pay. So if that's the gauge, one bad tenant, or I take more money and continual money.
Got you. Yeah, I was talking about like a giant, huge tenant, like a Goliath who just clogs the toilet all the time and calls you, but pays on time, or like 100 tiny tenants. They're perfect, but always late.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I personally, here's the thing. I don't get those calls. So it's a property manager. So I guess I'm going to deviate from that question. My property managers take care of all that.
Got you. What's the most absurd thing you've ever seen a tenant do in a property?
Oh my goodness. It was a hoarder house is one of them. And it was a 2-bedroom house, really relatively small house. It took 2 huge full dumpsters. I mean, it was lots of money in dumpster fees, but it was full ones that took the entire driveway to fill up. And I was like, how did you walk around that house, fill it up, that stuff? That was just really weird.
Oh my God. All right. Here's another one. Would you rather have 100 properties all on the same street, or one property scattered across 100 different states?
Since I build a business, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Actually, no, let me say it this way. So every investor gets this way, at least, in my coaching and all that sort of my students, we find a city and we start building that out, and we get a few properties, 5, 10 properties. Every investor will get to the point where they have a mindset shift. Like, oh my goodness, I've got a lot of properties, which is great, but I got a lot of eggs in one basket. What if my property manager goes? What if there's some hurricane or whatever? Let me get another city so that I can spread it out. So that's the big round question to say, I love having all over the place, but at the same time, I don't manage the property, so it doesn't matter.
I love it, man. Where can folks find you, Dustin?
Absolutely. So actually, do you mind if I give them my real estate investing course completely for free?
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So if you text the word rental, RENTAL, rental to 33777, rental to 33777, I'll send you for free my real estate investing course, show you how to find an area anywhere in the country to invest, how to buy for passive income, how to build the business right, and hopefully eventually get financial freedom. So you can even go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. All one word, masterpassiveincome.com/free course. I'll send it to you. Plus, you can even find me on my podcast. Jesse, you were on the podcast, the Master Passive Income Podcast. I started in 2015, and it's literally 90% a solo show, just me giving out how to do all this sort of stuff. I've been actually following you on Instagram. I'm like, you know what? I want to get on Instagram. I want to start using Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram. Send me a DM. I love chatting with people. I'm an extrovert, if you can't tell. I love talking to people. So the Dustin Heiner, THE Dustin Heiner. And I talk everything about money and real estate and everything. One quick last thing is obviously YouTube channel. You can find me there too, but I have my conference as well. I'm so bummed it's so close to yours, but it's the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. And so we're in the spring as well. And we love just connecting with people, just like your event. It's all about connecting people, but you go to rubcon.com, REWBCON, rubcon.com. You can find me there and hang out with me. But Jesse, it's so good to hang out with you. I'm so glad I came to your event, because we wouldn't know each other now. Two poor kids from the San Joaquin Valley in California, and get to hopefully help a lot of people to invest.
Yeah, well, there it is. There it is, folks. Dustin has said it all. It comes from the armpit of California, figuring things out, working for the government, gets fired, and finally gets that wake-up call. And here we are today, Dustin. It's been a pleasure, man.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you for listening to the JV Podcast. I'm Jesse Vasquez, your host. I appreciate you for listening. And if you could do me a huge solid, go like and subscribe to this. This helps us tremendously. And as always, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.